Hello, welcome to Raymond Castile's Basement of Horror. This is the penultimate episode of the 5th season. I see the word penultimate misused a lot. I think most people believe penultimate means ultimate. If they want to say that something is the best, the greatest, they'll say it's the penultimate. That's not what penultimate means. Penultimate means the next to the last. I don't even think it has anything to do with whether it's great or not great. I think it's a matter of chronology. It's the next to the last. So this is the next to the last episode. We have one more episode to go. That makes this the penultimate episode. But it sounds impressive. The penultimate episode sounds amazing. But it just means it's the next to the last episode. Well, the topic for the last episode will be a surprise. It always is. But it's the exciting season finale. We always have an exciting season finale. Which means it's really not that exciting at all. That's kind of a joke when I call it the exciting season finale. It's usually very low-key, very, very personal, and a little different from what we normally do. And this will be no exception. I'll be talking about something a little more personal, still collector-oriented, but a little more personal. And if all goes according to plan, which I'm sure it won't, it should be quite different. Quite different. And sorry, I thought I saw something there. We'll just cut that out. But anyway, so this episode is about Mezco silent screamers. Mezco silent screamers. We did a Mezco episode, but that was about their Universal Monsters toy line. This one focuses on silent movie characters. I don't think there's no Universal Monsters in this at all. Most of them are German expressionist characters. So here are the silent screamers. And these are based on films like The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, Nosferatu, Metropolis, and there are a couple of American films as well, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Edison's Frankenstein. But most of the line is based on German expressionist cinema. And you can see it's a very stylized line of action figures. And ordinarily I don't have any loose toys to show you, but I actually do have some here. And they're pretty cool. I'm almost afraid to pick them up because they'll fall apart. But let's see if I can carefully pick these up without catastrophe. Okay, first of all, I have them on cards. I have all these on cards. So here is the topic of today's episode. That is our good friend Count Orlok from Nosferatu. And you can see he's very stylized. He's got a bunch of rats, as he did in the movie. He brings a plague of rats with him wherever he goes. And some of those rats come off. Let's see if I can take a rat off. There we go. There's a rat. So some of them come off. Most of them are stuck there permanently. He has very spindly legs. And the hips do not move. Articulation really isn't the point of this series. It's not trying to be super articulated. It's really going more for the sculpt, trying to create a certain atmosphere with these these elaborate diorama bases. Now this in particular, this Count Orlok, it's not really based on the movie image, Max Schreck in his makeup. This is based on the pre-production designs, the character designs created by Albin Grau, an artist named Albin Grau, who is largely responsible for the look of Nosferatu. F.W. Murnau directed it, but the look of the thing is very much Albin Grau's vision. And this figure, this Count Orlok figure, is really based on the drawings of Albin Grau, the pre-production artwork that he created for Nosferatu, which stands on its own as great and important German Expressionist art, separate from the movie. Even if the movie had never been made, that art is important. It's important German Expressionist art. And I don't really know that the movie, there's a debate about this, whether the movie should really be considered German Expressionism. If anything, I think it's naturalism in many ways. It has expressionist elements, but I think it's leaning more towards naturalism in many respects. So there's debate about whether Nosferatu should really be considered a German Expressionist film. Some people would say it's the ultimate German Expressionist film. Other people would say, nah, not really. It's sort of Expressionism and sort of naturalism. When the vampire is around, it's more Expressionism. When he's not around, then it seems to be aiming for a more naturalistic style. But the illustrations, Albin Grau's illustrations, those are very much Expressionist, classic Expressionism. And he is an interesting little creature. His skin changes color when he's exposed to the sunlight. He doesn't disintegrate, no, but his skin changes color if you expose him to the sun. I don't know what color changes it. I think it turns blue. I'm not sure. I guess he's out of breath. He turns blue. There we go. And it was hard to get him on that base because of the way his legs are articulated or lack of articulation. Well, before we show the other ones, let's get our notes out. So I went over all this in the previous Mezco episode, but let's just recap. The company really started as Aztech Toyz. That was the original name. In 2000, the year 2000, Michael Markowitz partnered with a company called Art Asylum. And Art Asylum made some toys on their own. I've got some of their toys. But Art Asylum partnered with Michael Markowitz. They got together and they created this company called Aztech Toyz. And Toys was spelled with a Z at the end instead of an S. Aztech Toyz. That was in 2000. And they were that company, Aztech Toyz, was the original producer of the Silent Screamers line. So the first series of Silent Screamers was an Aztech Toyz toy line. And then somehow over the next year, Michael and Art Asylum parted ways, and they dissolved their partnership. But Markowitz continued the company as Mezco. So that was when the company we now know as Mezco was properly born. And he continued with this toy line, even though Aztech Toyz started it. Mezco finished it by releasing a second series of Silent Screamers. So that this toy line bridges the transition between two different companies, Aztech Toyz and Mezco. First series, which is what's here. First series was Aztech Toyz, second series was Mezco, and it was the first toy line that Mezco put out. And then shortly afterward, they came out with Living Dead dolls, and that's really the toy line that made their fortune and put them on the map, the Living Dead dolls. And that's all the notes, pertinent notes I've got. So let's look at Caligari. And if I try to pick up this entire display, it's going to fall apart. So let's just pick up Caligari. See, he's already falling apart. Lots of pieces to him. Okay, here's Dr. Caligari from the movie The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. He has a little staff with a crystal ball, which I do not think he had in the movie. And you can see this is very much a steampunk style. That was very much in fashion at the time. I don't know when the term steampunk came into being. I did not research that. But I know it's really big around the turn of the century, the 21st century. People were really into steampunk. And this is this is quintessential steampunk. It's not German Expressionism, it's steampunk. It's highly stylized, to put it mildly. Here he is without his hat. Does he look like the movie character? Not really. I mean, if you use your imagination, maybe, kind of, sort of. And he does come apart. His cape comes off. Here he is without his cape. Don't know if his goggles come off. I'm not going to try. I'm not sure. I'm not going to try it. But the whole figure comes apart. Let's see if we can get him apart. I'm trying to remember how to do this. Oh, here we go. Oh my goodness. So you can see inside of his costume what he looks like. Let's see if we can get this side off. Oh my goodness. There he is in a straitjacket, but he's got, what is that, a centipede? He's got creepy crawlies all over him. It's a very stylized representation of this guy in a straitjacket. It's like a nightmare straitjacket. And he was trying to suggest something from the subconscious, something allegorical, symbolic, because the movie is very, very symbolic. It's not a film to be taken literally, and it's all about the best way I could succinctly describe it would be it's a movie about the subconscious. Not exactly, but that's the best way to describe it. So what's happening in the movie isn't what's really happening. Spoilers for a 100-year-old movie, but you see at the end that the story that you've been following is not it's not real. It's not what's really going on. I mean, it's really quite disgusting when you look at some of this stuff. It's sort of a body horror. I don't know what this stuff is. Bones and crazy things. Eyeballs. It's pretty gross. Now, when these came out, there was a lot of mixed feelings about it. People respected the fact that it was doing something different, but I think there was a lot of dissatisfaction about how stylized these toys were, because they were very, very, obviously very stylized. Personally, I would have preferred a sideshow style toy line. And these were out at the same time as the Sideshow Universal monsters, which are very realistic, screen accurate. And I would have preferred something like that. I mean, I would still like to see Dr. Caligari action figures. I think Super 7 put out Dr. Caligari himself. I don't think they did Cesare, though, did they? I don't think so. But I would like to see some movie-style Caligari figures. That would be cool. It's strange that we don't have that. That someone like Sideshow or NECA or someone hasn't put out something like that yet. You'd think they would. But that's not what we have here. These are very, very stylized. I wonder if you can hold this. No, not really. But these are extremely stylized, obviously. So let's see. I kind of get this in his hand. I can kind of. Now he's back together. There's his real self in there. And the reason he's in a straitjacket, if you want to call that a straitjacket, is because, again, spoilers, was kind of a double spoiler. At the end of the film, you realize that what you've been watching isn't what you thought it was. What you thought was happening is not what's really happening. And it's sort of a twist, and then it twists again. And that makes it sound like some kind of contemporary thriller, but it's not. It's a very symbolic film. It's not to be taken literally. It's a film of symbols. It's kind of a dream, like trying to put a dream on film. I want to show you this. So that's Dr. Caligari's sideshow style exhibit. He's like a traveling sideshow huckster. And this is his poster of Cesare. And the one in the movie does look crude like that. And the movie has all these, the sets are all painted, hand-painted, and has these kinds of designs on the floors and the walls where there are shapes that seem to be commenting on the action and all these uneven angles. They did a great job of capturing that. I really like particularly the Caligari figures in this line because they really went the extra mile to capture the style of the movie, the visual style. Even though it's so highly stylized, within that style, highly stylized aesthetic, they really somehow stay true to the vision of the film. Now let's look at Cesare. First, let's look at his victim. This is a little bendy figure. And by the way, as we'll see soon, these are what I guess you would call the silver screen versions, the black and white versions of these figures that I'm showing you right now. She's very different in the color version. She's got a blue outfit, and there's a lot more definition of her skin tone compared to the color of her shoes. She just looks very different. I liked this one. I think that might be why I opened up a black and white version of all of these. I think I liked she might have been the deciding factor because I liked that she had a white dress and she looked like this. The other one, the color one, has a blue dress, which is kind of odd. She reminds me of Isabella Gianni. Can you see Isabella Gianni in there? And she is basically a bendy. I think her torso is plastic, but her arms and legs are rubber with wires. So she is a victim for Cesare, the somnambulist. Did I pronounce that right? The sleepwalker, basically. The hypnotized subject of Dr. Caligari. Or is he? And there's Cesare. He might be the most screen-accurate character in the set. He really does look like the movie character. Given the stylized aesthetic with the exaggerated features, even given that, he still looks very much like the character in the movie. Conrad Veidt played Cesare. Conrad Veidt is very famous for a number of films. Non-horror people will know him for Casablanca. But Conrad Veidt was, well, I mean, he acted in a variety of films, but he's particularly well known for his horror and suspense roles. He played this character, Cesare. And if you look at that, see the design down there? A lot of moments in the movie are, they seem predestined because the set has spots. As a scene unfolds, there will be like a path on the floor where the characters are going to walk. Not like something like a blocking pattern for the actors to look at, but an artistic thing for the audience to be aware of. Jagged patterns that are where the character is going to walk in that direction, and then like a big design like that where something important is going to happen on that spot. And then the characters walk along that design, and then someone falls or is found on the floor, or some violence happens, or something happens on that spot or on a wall or whatever. So it's like the universe, it's like predestination. Like the universe is controlling people's actions. Like it's all fated to unfold a certain way. They have to walk a certain way, and something bad is going to happen on this spot, and there's no way to avoid it. It's already, it's painted there on the floor or on the wall or someplace. And they put that in the toy, and I like that. I like that. They did that with both of this idea of the predestined patterns and where people are going to move and where things are going to happen. It's all broadcast by these designs in the set. But again, it's a very symbolic film where you're not really supposed to take it literally. You're supposed to think of it as a dream, as a work of art, like a painting is not a photograph. And even though these are films, I think they're meant to be interpreted more like paintings than photos, even though it's a photographic medium. I think the artistic vision behind them is more of a painterly one, which makes sense with the whole German Expressionist movement. It's it's not just painting, but that's probably the best known manifestation of German Expressionism is in painting. And look at this. Now, this is not really German Expressionism, in my opinion. This is more Tim Burton. There's an obvious Tim Burton influence in this. Although street lamps in the movie are crooked like this, and for all I know, that this could be exactly what the street lamp looks like. I didn't check before I shot this. Maybe it's curled exactly like that, but just to me, I look at this, given when this came out, the toy, it seems more Tim Burton inspired than anything else. But, that makes sense because, it's going to fall over. Tim Burton is very much German Expressionist cinema inspired. He's inspired, or not just cinema, but paintings, everything. He's very much inspired by German Expressionism. So is that like Tim Burton, or is Tim Burton like that? Which comes first? Okay, let's see some carded examples of these things. Is this behind me? Oh gosh, how am I going to get this out of here? Let's just reach in and pull one out. Okay, that's knock. Knock 3 times. That's another knock. Well, let's start with knock. All right, he's from Nosferatu. And this toy is called Knock Renfield. In the movie, he's called Knock, but he's the equivalent of Renfield because Nosferatu is an unlicensed, unauthorized adaptation of Dracula. And this was the Renfield equivalent character. But in the movie, he's called Knock. And you can see he's very exaggerated, to say the least. And I've never taken him out of the package, so I don't really know how the diorama fits together, or what exactly it is. I've not scrutinized that. I guess I just wasn't too concerned with this particular character. That's why I didn't open one up. And you can see the attempt at suggesting celluloid, and it's got that sepia tone. So I don't know if they call these silver screen or not, but this is the black and white version, but they're really sepia. They're brown. And we'll see the color one in a second. Here's the back. A lot of information on this back. There's Aztech Toyz. Developed by Art Asylum. Aztech Toyz, sacrifice nothing. That's her motto. Collect all 4. Let's see what it says here. Before film had a voice, there were silent screamers. Bum, bum, bum. Join us as we unlock the vaults of the silent movie monsters, inspired and recreated from the original Nosferatu, regarded as one of the most influential movies in film history. Look at all these. There's lots of credits. I guess this is the dawn of credits on toys. I mean, look at this. It's like the end of a motion picture. You ought to have like a score playing while you read those. Lots of credits. I find it interesting that well, there's a lot of interesting things here, but the most interesting one is the packaging art is by Alex Ross. And I listed this first series. We'll see about the second series, but I know this first series, the packaging art, is by Alex Ross. Maybe the second series too. I'll check. But definitely the first one is the design. Well, you know, they've got different credits for design here, like packaging concepts, packaging design. These are all different names. And then packaging art, Alex Ross. Developed in association with Swede Creations. Now, if you don't know who Alex Ross is, I mean, he's a very, very famous painter, famous illustrator. Best known, I think, for his superhero art, but he's done all kinds of characters. When Alex Ross paints a character, as far as I'm concerned, that becomes the iconic look for that character. If you want to know what is the definitive look for a particular pop culture character, look for the Alex Ross painting, if one exists, and that's the definitive look. I don't know if Alex Ross ever painted the Max Schreck movie version of Count Orlok, but if he did, it would be the definitive Count Orlok. If Alex Ross paints Superman and you want to know what Superman looks like, look at Alex Ross's painting. That's what Superman looks like. But that's not what we have here. That's quite the opposite. That's not what Knock looks like in the movie. So this is interesting. I would never have thought, based on Alex Ross's contemporary reputation, I would never have thought that this was Alex Ross. That's a surprise, actually. When I was looking at these earlier before I started shooting, I didn't know that he had worked on these, and I was very surprised that apparently I'm looking at Alex Ross artwork. Now here's the color version. This is the first color figure we've seen. All the ones I've shown you, loose and carded, they've all been the black and white versions. This is our first color one. And you can see right off the bat, he doesn't have that sepia tone. He's got red details. Always I prefer the color versions of a toy when they're made in color and black and white, like Sideshow and the silver screen versions, and NECA and the current black and white versions. I always prefer the color versions. And the same thing's true here. I prefer the color versions of these toys. They just look cooler. I mean, they stand out more. I like seeing the red inside the mouth. I like seeing a flesh tone instead of sepia. Other than the paint, I think it's identical. And you can see here that the film has that gray look. Ironically, it's more silver screen than this other one, which is more sepia. See? These sepia tone versions have a kind of a brownish, muddy colored look. And I guess I understand why they did it that way, but I prefer full color versions. We'll look at all the Nosferatu ones first. Okay. Alright, so let's look at the black and white one. I'm not sure what they're calling. They don't differentiate on the card as far as I can see. What's the color one? What's the black and white one? So I don't know what they called these black and white ones. They're really sepia. They're not really, they're not silver screen. So that's what he looks like in his package. And that's the card art. You can see all the rats, the individual rats. Now here's the color version. And, you know, they're both, in this case anyway, they're both pretty much black and white toys. The color version, the only way that you know he's supposed to be in color is that he's got that red mouth. But he's gray. Everything on him is gray. Whereas the so-called black and white one is sepia brown. Now the rats are different colors. You see some of the rats are gray, some of the rats are brown, which is not the case on the black and white one that we saw. Now look at that. So that looks like black and white photography. I don't know if it's probably a painting, I don't know, but it has the look, the contrast, the glow of black and white photography. And a toy that's trying to mimic a black and white look, it just doesn't look black and white. It looks like a gray toy. And just like the other one, his skin changes color when exposed to the sun. You can see all the rats back there. You sort of see them back there. All the base with all the rats on it. Now I'm looking at the back of this. Now, there's really not a lot of difference on the back between the color and black and white versions. It's pretty much the same. Obviously it's color, so there's going to be color in these photos, whereas on the other card, the toys are pictured just brown, sepia tone. Here they're pictured in full color, and I prefer that. I think that it's better in color. It looks better. But you can see this weird public restroom, steampunk, brown, smeary, corroded, eroded, distressed style of color and presentation. This kind of, what would you call it? I don't know. Urban decay, back alley, dystopian. It's not cyberpunk, but it's got elements of that. It's steampunk. This whole line is a steampunk extravaganza. The whole aesthetic is obviously steampunk. And that's Alban Grau's artwork in 3 dimensions. That's what the pre-production art for Nosferatu looks like. It looks like that. They actually did a great job of capturing that. Instead of just doing whatever they felt like doing, they really tried to capture that Alban Grau style in these figures, and I like that. The Knock Renfield, I don't know what was going on with that, but on Count Orlok, they really did try to nail that look from the pre-production art. I think it works very well. They did an anniversary figure of Count Orlok. They did a couple of them in recent years, and I did not buy them. You can still find these for like $15. They're cheap. We might talk later about why they're cheap, but they are cheap. They never caught on. Now let's look at the Caligari figures. And I would say about the movies, Nosferatu is one of my favorite films. I would say it's probably my top 10 favorite films. I really like that movie. Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, I don't know if it's in my top 20, definitely my top 50, but maybe top 20 or just shy of top 20. I don't like it as much as Nosferatu. I like it a lot, but not as much as Nosferatu. I'm quite a fan of Nosferatu, and I watch that every year, and I've seen it on the big screen. I've seen it with a live orchestra accompanying, doing the score. And there is an original score for Nosferatu. So if you're going to watch Nosferatu, oh, by the way, when I'm alone, no one's watching, no one's listening, I pronounce it Nosferatu. But when I'm in public, like we are here, I say Nosferatu, like a normal person. But in private, I say Nosferatu. Anyway, Nosferatu, if you're going to watch that, make sure you see the most up-to-date restoration with the original score, not a new score composed for it, the original score. It does have an original score composed when the movie was brand new, when it premiered. It had an original orchestral score that was performed live in Munich when you saw the film on a huge screen, like those old silent movie screens were like our IMAX screens now. Gigantic screen. You had a real live orchestra right there. By the time it got to the United States and small city, we'd have just an organist. But when it premiered, it had an original score composed for the movie during its premiere. And same thing with Metropolis. Metropolis has a fantastic original score. You really need to see the most complete, up-to-date restoration of Metropolis. Make sure it has the original score, not a new score, the original score composed for its original release. So, Caligari. And some people say Caligari. It seems like the preferred pronunciation seems to change. I think 20 years ago everyone was saying Caligari. And now I think they're back to Caligari. So I will say Caligari. And also Cesare's name. The way people pronounce that seems to... The in-fashion pronunciation right now I think is still Cesare, but that's changed back and forth over time. So there's Cesare. This is the color version, right? No, this is the sepia version. I can tell because of the girl's costume. So you get 2 figures with this. I think it's pretty cool. This might be my favorite of the entire set, the entire series. Some nice artwork. Recreating images from the movie. I really think they did a great job with the Caligari figures. Dr. Caligari himself, they probably got carried away with when you take him apart, and he's that weird nightmare version of himself in the straitjacket. Yeah, okay, that goes a little too far, but by and large, I think they did a great job with these 2 figure sets, Cesare and Caligari, and particularly Cesare. This really looks like the character, given the aesthetic they're using, and just having his victim in there, that makes it all click. I don't know if you can hear Billy meowing in the background. He's getting annoyed with me. He's getting impatient. Billy, this episode has quite a ways to go, I'm afraid. Just hang in there. He was right there. I can't see him now. I think he got fed up. And if this is the first episode you've ever seen of this show, Billy is my cat. I have a black cat named Billy. I used to have a cat named Stinker, so if you see some early episodes, you see another cat named Stinker. He passed away. He was 20 years old. He passed away. But now Billy is just shy of 3 years old. And he might jump up here at some point. He was right here a second ago. Okay, there's the color version. And you can see a big difference. The girl has a blue dress. Blue. I'm not too sure about that blue dress. I think that looks a little weird. I like the more gothic white dress. And just a lot of color in there in general. Look at that. Big difference, almost a Basil Gogos kind of color scheme. Yeah, I mean, the color really pops. I could wonder about the choice of the blue, but it does look nice. It does look nice. It's a very dramatic toy line. Look at that. Very weird and dramatic. And the Tim Burton influence is very much there. I mean, he has that Edward Scissorhands look. But that's not inappropriate because Tim Burton is very much influenced by German Expressionism. So it's sort of a chicken and an egg kind of a thing. I mean, is it copying Tim Burton, or is Tim Burton copying the style that this is based on? let's look at the good doctor. And oh, by the way, each of these has this little card on the bottom, little instruction sheet or whatever that is. I guess it's an instruction sheet. They all have the same one. All right, so let's look at Caligari, the doctor. Okay, this is the black and white one that like the loose one we saw. Now this is a huge, heavy toy. How that bubble stays on there, I have no idea. I can't believe that bubble is going to stick to that cardboard forever. I don't know how it's even holding on there now. He actually looks pretty darn good in the card, doesn't he? I mean, that makes a statement visually. That really does look nice. He almost looks better on a card than he does loose. But then I really like that diorama background. Does he have his, yeah, so his goggles come off. I didn't know that, but obviously they do. I wasn't sure. Didn't want to risk taking them off. And you see those 3 lines in his gloves? That's right out of the movie. Those 3 black lines. That's a famous visual trademark of the character. If you were going to cosplay Dr. Caligari, you better have white gloves with those 3 black lines. Caligari really isn't as heavy as this toy would lead you to believe. He's not as round as that. He's not a skinny man by any means, but he's not like that. That's not really what I think they're going for some kind of gorged on evil idea with this toy. Like a kind of excess with that long hair and the big belly. There's a feeling of gorging himself on his excess and his evil and his self-indulgence. And that's not really what the character is about in the movie. I don't think so. There's a lot of liberties taken with this character, Caligari. The Cesare is much more faithful to the movie character. But this Caligari is an interesting toy, you gotta admit. It's a visually interesting toy. And there's the color version, and like that just looks better. I mean, come on. That's a better looking toy. Those colors. It's a better toy. And the colors on the packaging is better. The color scheme. The color behind him. Look at the card back there. It's just better in color. Full color. And the difference between the buttons and the rest of the fabric and the beard, well, that's not beard, what am I saying, the hair and the fabric, the way the colors stand out from each other. It's just better. I like that look a lot more. And you've heard me rail against black and white toys before. I just don't like the idea of a gray toy, because black and white film has a certain look that's not, it's not about color. There's a texture, there's an aura, a glow to black and white film. There's a gleam, and you can't duplicate that in a plastic action figure. You just have a gray toy, and that's not black and white. That's not like photography. And in this case, they went with brown, this sepia tone, instead of a gray or a silvery look. They went with this brown look. That's why I said it had a public restroom aesthetic, or maybe a cockroach aesthetic. It has that kind of color to it. So I like the full color versions more. That's my opinion. Now some might say, so I like these toys, but they don't go for much money. In fact, I mean, what they're going for now in the collector market isn't really particularly if you think of adjusted dollars, it's not much more than they were selling for in the store. In adjusted dollars, might even be less, I don't know, but certainly they haven't accrued. They have not appreciated. And I wonder why that is. I think the stylized look is part of it. I said that they released Mezco released an anniversary Count Orlok as part of the 112 Collective series. This is not fitting. There it goes. And I would have been all over that if it had been priced more like a toy than an adult collectible, an adult trophy for someone who has lots of money. Yay, you made lots of money, fantastic. Some people buy sports cars or whatever, and other people buy expensive toys. I collect toys. I don't collect adult stuff. I want toys. And these are certainly aimed at a collector or an older enthusiast, but they were all sold at Toys R Us, hanging on peg hooks at Toys R Us, and they certainly have a lot of play value. They're very posable, bendable, they have play sets, diorama elements, they come apart. There's a lot of play value if you want. I mean, I don't think any kids would want to play with this stuff because of the subject matter, but you can't say they're not toys. They're toys. And I think it's okay to have I was looking for an age on here, like for ages 5 and up or something like that. I don't know. I'm sure it's on there somewhere. Oh, here we go. Well, this is about small parts. Not for children under 3 years. Psycho toys for crazy kids. So, I mean, obviously, this is not for little Jimmy and little Sally. This is, older people are going to be into these. But they're still toys. I feel like they're still toys. Everything about them just screams toy. And that's what I collect. I collect toys. And when it stops being a toy, I get less interested. And a lot of the NECA stuff, I like it. It's like the Universal Monsters and the horror stuff. I like it. I buy a lot of it. Not as much as some people, but I buy a lot of it. But I recognize that it's not really a toy. And I wish we would get back to toys. And I showed you, if I upload these in the order in which I shot them, then you would have already seen my Monster Flex Rubber Monster series, my episode on the Monster Flex toys. Those are toys. And I'm very happy that there's some kind of a monster toy line out there that kids could be into. Well, that's a lot of babbling, so let's just put this away. I think we'll cut for a second, and then let me put all this away. Okay, we put those away. Now let's look at the second series. And I did not buy these color and silver screen. I only bought the color versions of these. I think they did put them out, color and black and white, I think. They did, but I only bought the color ones. Because by this time, I guess I was getting a little tired of it. I think a lot of other people were getting tired of it because they didn't sell that well. But in hindsight, I do wish I'd bought the black and white versions of these. I could still buy the black and white ones. As I said, they just haven't gone up in value at all. So I could still, I'm sure without spending a whole lot of money, buy the black and white ones if I wanted to. So maybe that's something I should do eventually. Maybe this video will be so incredibly popular that the value of these things will go up considerably. So this is the second series. So this is made by Mezco proper. There's Mezco. Now it has, instead of the Aztech Toyz logo, it's got the Mezco logo. And this is Mr. Hyde. It's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Dr. Jekyll is actually inside of that. So there's the Mr. Hyde figure. And he actually does look kind of like the movie character. Not like, a sideshow likeness, but or a NECA likeness, but it's stylized. But it does look like the movie character. If I was not familiar with this toy, and you showed me a loose example, and you said, "Who is this?" I think I would guess that it's Mr. Hyde. It also sort of looks like a Disney witch, doesn't it? Like the Snow White witch. So the human Dr. Jekyll is inside of this guy, much like Caligari had that figure inside of a figure. Same kind of thing. Dr. Jekyll's in there. If you pull apart Mr. Hyde, inside you will find a Dr. Jekyll figure. I'm not sure if he's articulated or not. I think he is, the Dr. Jekyll. I don't remember. You can see the Dr. Jekyll figure is a lot smaller. It would have been interesting if they'd made a separate Dr. Jekyll. I think the symbolic point they were trying to make was that the Hyde personality was so powerful that it overwhelmed Dr. Jekyll, and that's why he's so much smaller than Mr. Hyde. This does come with a lab set. I can't see a whole lot of the detail, but it does have some kind of a lab diorama in there. You'd think it would have like a beaker to drink the potion. Maybe it does. I can't see it. But it's a really nice toy. So this is the 1920 version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, a U.S. film. It is a U.S. film. We've been seeing all these German expressionist characters, and this is finally a Hollywood movie. Here's the back of this card. I assume they all have the same back. It's a little different. I think I liked the first series more as far as the art design on the back. I mean, the front's pretty similar, but the back is definitely different. I think I prefer the first series. And let's see, is Alex Ross still involved with this? I don't see him. No. So no, Alex Ross is no longer involved. And there were some other interesting names I should have mentioned on the first series figures, but Alex Ross, his name just seemed to tower over the other ones. But he is not involved with this second series, apparently. It does have a different look. I mean, the visual approach, it's got the... Well, let's show you this. The name of the... It's still Silent Screamers, but it's Silent Screamers Real Masters. Now, why did they do that, I wonder? There is a different approach. Like, look how it has that kind of wispy, almost like a cloud, like a chemical cloud, which is a different approach to the Stylized thing. Now, is this card coming apart? I think it is. Or is that just the art? No, that's just the painting. That's how it's painted. But I'm surprised that any of these toys, any of these bubbles are still stuck to the card. It's all so heavy. And they're all very heavy. So this is a 1910 Frankenstein. Thomas Edison made a Frankenstein film. It's a short film. All of these other things are feature length, but this is a short film. And it was made by Thomas Edison. Generally regarded as the first horror movie, but I don't think it really is, but it's often called the first horror movie. You can see it, that is quite a different take on the Frankenstein monster. And that is not what he looks like in the Thomas Edison movie. He does not look like that. I mean, I can see where they derived this from the movie character, but it's quite a departure. And his features are, well, his shape is very exaggerated. You can see his back and the length of his arms. It's all very misshapen and exaggerated. And it's a cool toy. It doesn't really look anything like the Edison Frankenstein. It really looks nothing like it. But it's a cool toy. And I would like to see a really nice Edison Frankenstein action figure. There's been some garage kits. I would like to see a faithful creation, a faithful rendition of the Edison Frankenstein. I can imagine NECA or somebody doing that. I don't think Mego would do it. I think it's too obscure. Although Mego did do Count Orlok, but Nosferatu is different. That has become a pop culture thing that's transcended silent film and become just a general pop culture icon. Even people who've never watched a silent movie, they know who Nosferatu is. And the back looks the same. So they all have the same back. It's a neat toy. It's kind of ghastly. Has a sort of body horror vibe. A lot of these things do, but this one in particular does. And I'm assuming it has a lab playset. It looks like it's got a pretty substantial playset inside. I don't remember what... Well, okay, so we can see this little picture here. It has a wall or door or some kind of backdrop. So a pretty elaborate diorama. Let's take one more look at this weird character. Okay. Finally, as far as the regular sized characters are concerned, we have this one. And this is it's weird, it's probably my favorite character of the bunch, but my least favorite figure of this series. So this is the robot from Metropolis. Back to German Expressionism after 2 American films. Now we're back to a German film. And that's a very interesting toy. It's very nicely sculpted, and the colors are cool, and that chair is neat, and I mean the artwork on the car is really cool. And they got the look of the title right. I like that, the way they use the movie logo. And that looks neat. I mean, just on its own, it looks really nice. But I think the reason I don't like it as much as the others is because, well, let's talk this out a little bit. So many of these other characters, they're very organic. They're people with makeup on. And you can play around with the look of it. You don't have to get it exactly right. And you can still have the character. Like this Edison Frankenstein is a big departure. But I can still sort of see the Edison Frankenstein in there. And these are really stylized, but I can definitely see the movie characters in there. With Metropolis, it's the Maria robot, or I think these days they're calling it the Machine Mensch. I think that's its official name these days. But it's the robot from Metropolis. It is such a brilliant design, just as it is. It's not just someone with like grease paint on. It's a beautiful, precise design, this character design, this costume. And of course it inspired C-3PO and many other things over the years. But it's so perfect just the way it is that you can't improve on it. All you can do is try, perhaps in vain, to capture some of that perfection, but you can't do it one better. You cannot improve on that design. It's perfect. It's a masterpiece. The movie's a masterpiece, and the character design is a masterpiece. So obviously here, just like all the other ones, they did their own take on it. That's not a movie accurate depiction. And just as a figure on its own, it looks nice. But as a version, a depiction of that character, I don't like it, because it just takes too many liberties. And you cannot improve on that design. You just can't. You can't improve the Metropolis design. That character is perfect, exactly like it is in the movie. And there's nothing, you touch one thing, nudge something, fudge something, adjust something, and it's going to make it worse, not better. You can't improve on it. So I'm not that keen on this very stylized look. It looks, the attempt to make it look feminine is sort of laughable. I think it makes the thing, it makes it look more stereotypical. The character already looks feminine just as it is. You don't need to make it more feminine. Like these giant breasts and the narrow waist and just the face and the way they're trying to, I guess they're giving it an attitude with that face, and I don't know. It's a nice toy, but it doesn't look like Metropolis. And in the case of this character, it's such a highly designed character in the first place that you just can't improve on it. It is a work of art in itself. Just that robot, that character, it's so iconic and so perfect that you cannot improve on it. So when you try, you're taking a big gamble. I don't think the gamble paid off. But it's a shame, because just taking it on its own merits, it's a very nice looking figure. And the chair is nice. It looks, more or less like the chair in the movie. The whole thing is nice. It's very nice. It would have been cool, perhaps, to have the glowing rings around it. I think there's going to be a model kit that has those rings. I don't know about that in a model kit, but maybe in this that would have worked. Like glow-in-the-dark rings or something that you could put over it to make those glowing rings, like when the robot comes to life in that famous scene. So Metropolis is one of my favorite films. I would put that in the top 10. I would go so far as to say Metropolis, without qualifications, without asterisks. Metropolis is one of the best movies ever made. It is one of the greatest movies of all time, bar none. Easily in my top 10 favorite films. So it's not one of the best science fiction or the best fantasy or the best silent movie or best, it's not, you don't have to qualify. It's just one of the greatest movies ever made. And it's actually still, it seems hard to believe that that movie even exists. I mean, it would be impressive today, let alone in the 1920s. Wow, so that's the regular series of figures. And I recall that the second series, the distribution was a little spotty compared to the first series. The first series, you could find those everywhere. I seem to remember that these were a little harder to find, or they weren't out as long, or there was something I recall having a little bit harder time getting them. I don't know. And you can see I only bought one of each. I didn't buy the black and white ones. I didn't buy a set to open up. I was sort of done with them by the time that second series came out. Here's the final figure. Okay, so this Suncoast bag is not the original bag that it came in. This is the Golem. Back to German Expressionism again. This gigantic Golem figure. Big, heavy toy. Suncoast was the only store I ever saw these golems for sale at. I only saw them at Suncoast. But when I bought this on eBay. I didn't buy this at the store because they were expensive. They were like $50 back then. And they were always beat up because of the size of the box. And I just didn't want to spend the money. And maybe I'm misremembering 50, but that's what I'm remembering. Maybe it was 30 or whatever, but I'm remembering 50. So, in any case, it was expensive for that time. It was more expensive certainly than the other figures, and the boxes were always beat up. But the only place I ever saw it for sale was Suncoast. Later, I bought this one on eBay, and I happened to have the Suncoast bag. So I put it in the Suncoast bag so that I can pretend that I bought it at Suncoast when it was new. But I get a nostalgic feeling looking at that Suncoast bag. I remember being in the store. These were always on the floor. They were never on a shelf. They were always on the floor. I remember being in the Suncoast store, seeing maybe 3 or 4 at a time, 3 or 4 of these sitting on the floor where they had been kicked around a few times and were getting beat up around the edges. And you then would have a big red sticker, a clearance sticker on them. But I remember those days going to places like Suncoast and finding weird stuff. I remember the days of actually having a Toys R Us store in the United States and having KB toys in the mall, but also having these oddball little boutique stores like Suncoast, Tower Records, and other things like that. And you could find toys, weird toys that you wouldn't find anywhere else. Well, let's look at the Golem. He's huge. And he is a little stylized, yes, but he actually does look more or less like the character in the movie. He's a little exaggerated, as they all are. All the toys in this series are, a little exaggerated, but they didn't go crazy with him. They stuck more or less to the movie design. Obviously, he's got bigger arms and shorter legs, and his dimensions his proportions are exaggerated. But that's basically the character. That's what he looks like. It's kind of a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles version of the character. If Playmates had made the Golem as a turtle character, this is what it would look like. And they went all out This thing, look at that biblical logo. And then they have a different font on here. And he comes with that big door diorama. It's a huge diorama. It's gigantic. This thing's heavy. Brought forth to protect, can such massive power truly be controlled? Okay. For ages over 8. And look at the spelling on that. It's a bit pretentious, but then when they have that spelling, that kind of sticks a pin in it. Oh boy, a lot of reading to do back there. You can see this toy is taking itself very seriously. And it's a cool toy. You want to see what the actual movie Golem looks like. That's a pretty good representation of the movie character. That's what he looks like in the film. And it's a great film, The Golem, How He Came Into the World. It's a really good movie. There are 3 Golem movies. I guess the first one was just called, well, there's The Golem and the Ballerina, The Golem and the Dancer. It has a title, something like that. And I think the first one's just called The Golem, I think. And I believe this is the second movie, The Golem, How He Came Into the World. I've heard different things about the order of the films. I think this was the second film. And I believe the first one, I think, is lost. And then we sort of have the third one, or part of it, or something. I don't know. But we've got all of How He Came Into the World. We have the entire film, thank goodness. And it's quite a movie. It's got this epic scale. It's very elaborate, very dramatic. It's not what you think it's going to be. You think it's going to be just this Frankenstein-like characters shambling around, maybe killing a few people, and people getting worried, what are we going to do about it? And then killing him at the end. No. It's a big movie. It's a big, elaborate, dramatic spectacle. And it's an excellent film. Well, this is a big, heavy toy. I'm not going to take it out. I have taken it out because the top is not sealed. I did take it out once when I first got it just to make sure it was all there. And it was a pain in the neck to get it out and put it back. I'm not going to do that. There it is. I mean, you can see it in there. And the diorama that it comes with is just huge. When you put it all together, it's ridiculous. It's a huge door. I just wonder, like, what was the thinking? I'm not criticizing it. I'm wondering, why make the Golem huge like this instead of this big on a card like the rest of them? Why were there only 3 characters in the second series, the carded ones? Why then have this boxed one? Why not just make him on a card like the rest and just make him like that big? I don't know. Why did they go with this style in a box? And they went big, not just with the toy, with the whole presentation, with the box, with the ridiculous diorama. It comes out of this box. You think, oh, maybe it's like this big. No. It's in pieces. You have to put it together, and it's huge. It's a big diorama. But why? It doesn't need a big diorama. I mean, where would you display something like that? And I don't know, it's cool, but it's just a big door. There's this little girl in the movie who does an important thing at the end of the movie, and that's one of the iconic moments. They could have had the little girl, they could have had some steps, had like the golem coming down, had the girl there. You know, there's other things they could have done. But, you know, he's neat. He's a cool toy, very odd, very unusual, very strange that with this final toy in the set, they went such a different direction. Very unusual. Here's the cool Suncoast video bag again. Does anyone out there have a plastic bag from Kresge? Do they have plastic bags at Kresge with the Kresge logo on them? It may be neat to have a Kresge bag for like the Aztech Toyz monsters. I wouldn't put them in the bag, but maybe I would fold it up and put it in the same box where I have my Hyde monsters. It'd be cool to have a Ben Franklin bag. Does anyone out there collect plastic store bags, like vintage ones, like Kresge or Ben Franklin, or stores that aren't around anymore? It would be neat to have, particularly those two, Kresge and Ben Franklin. Now, there was another figure like the Golem. They made a Jack the Ripper in a big box like that. But he's not officially part of the Silent Screamers line. That's why I don't have him. I thought about buying one like a year ago when I knew eventually I would do this episode. But he's not part of the Silent Screamers line. They didn't put Silent Screamers on the box. There's no Jack the Ripper movie, no silent movie that he's based on. It's just a steampunk horror toy. And, you know, I don't collect serial killer stuff. I don't collect toys based on real life killers or bad people. Like, I don't have any Hitler toys. Or there have been figures of Hitler over the years, all kinds of figures. I wouldn't want a Charles Manson thing. I mean, there's merchandise out there for serial killers and evil people. And there's definitely Jack the Ripper stuff. I'm just, not into that. Not into that. I don't want real life killer toys. And I feel the same way about something like the Elephant Man. There's merchandise based on the Elephant Man. And in that case, he was a real person with disabilities, and he's a fascinating figure to watch in a movie or a play or a book, but I wouldn't want a doll of the Elephant Man or a mask or a bust of the Elephant Man. There are such things, and nah. Let's separate real life and the movies and keep those things separate. Real life tragedy is not fun. Whether it's the tragedy of a killer murdering people or the tragedy of someone born with disabilities in an age where society was not equipped to help him, that's real life. Let's keep that separate. Let's have our fantasy over here and our real life over here and not mix them up. It's a really interesting toy line from 23 years ago. It's surprising we haven't had a silent movie toy line. Not like this. We've had a figure here, a figure there, but not like this. It's still the only attempt to do a comprehensive, dedicated silent movie toy line. And it's surprising that we haven't had something like that from Sideshow or NECA or Super 7 or Mego or anybody else. And it's surprising that even Mezco hasn't really gone that route. They did the Anniversary Orlok, and I'm sure the Living Dead dolls have had silent movie characters of some kind, but not like this. Not here's the entire line of silent movie. That's gonna be our thing. We're gonna do a toy line. It's all about the silent movie characters. No one else has done that, and that's maybe because these didn't do very well. Maybe people decide they learned their lesson. We're not going to try that again. But I guess it would have to today. It would have to be NECA. Who else would it be? I think not just like a figure here or there, like Mego did a Count Orlok, and NECA's going to do a London After Midnight. No, like a full line. We're going to do all like the same characters. We're going to do Nosferatu, Caligari, Metropolis, Golem. Some American things, Jekyll and Hyde. Let's do Georges Méliès's characters, like the moon with the rocket, and go in deep with these silent movie characters. I feel like if it was marketed the right way, handled the right way, and done with movie likenesses, not stylized, I think there's a market. I think if NECA did a silent movie horror line, all the horror people would buy it. And I don't know why Super 7 didn't go harder on that. They did Dr. Caligari, and they did Count Orlok, and they did the Metropolis robot, and I think that's it. They didn't do Cesare. I don't know why they stopped. It would have been neat to do a whole line with consistent card art that looked the same for each one. That would have been neat, but they didn't do that. So it's a unique line that kind of stands on its own. The only time anyone's really tried to do a line like this for silent movies. And it's a neat relic of this particular period where the steampunk thing was trendy in the popular culture. Okay, well, we've probably gone on long enough. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you sticking it out this long. I hope you enjoyed it. I thought it was a worthwhile toy line to cover. Again, not a big hit with collectors so far, but maybe that'll change. I think it deserves recognition and deserves a place in your horror monster collection. And maybe if you've never considered this toy line before, maybe this has gotten you a little more interested in it. And if nothing else, at least you're aware. Maybe you forgot about this line, but now I've reminded you. Okay, so we'll have one more episode this season. One more episode, and then the season will be over. And it'll be kind of a personal topic. Well, the final episode will be about a certain character named... Well, I lost the light. Okay. I guess he doesn't want me to say his name. Oh, right. Well, whatever. I better wrap it up. Thank you very much. Until next time, the one who dies with the most toys is dead.